Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in for another great session in the pipeline. We're going to talk about a theme which is very relevant today: no code, low codes, the security catastrophe, and how to mitigate risk while accelerating innovation. And for this particular session, we have an elite panel consisting of great thought leaders joining us. So I would like to welcome on the stage Mr. Shivnath Somnathan. He's the ex CISO with Freshworks, a brand that you are all aware of today. He's going to be the moderator for the day when he takes this session on. Next, I would like to request Ms. Lakshmi Nair to join us. She is the managing principal, SIG Consulting with Synopsys Incorporation. So I would like to welcome Lakshmi on the stage, please. Thank you, Lakshmi, for joining us. And we'll I'd like to invite Mr. Venkata Satish. He is the Director Security with Rediff India and a seasoned professional and widely known in the network. So, welcome, Venkata.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
with that, I would now like to hand it over to Shivnath to take the session forward. We will be expecting another panelist joining us in some time. He's facing some technical issues, so once he's sorted, he will join us. So, over to you, Shivnath.
Thank you so much, Sukrit. And what a wonderful panel we have today. But first things first, let me thank DSEI for giving us this opportunity to come together and converge on a topic which is perhaps becoming more and more relevant today. With rapid technology evolution and the need to um, release products and solutions in a more agile and seamless way. Uh, I also would like to thank the attendees who will be joining the session and would request them to be more interactive, ask your questions and offer your comments and feedback um, as we take the panel discussion along. So with that, let me also tell you that we have a good blend within the panel today. We have um, the the representation from the CISO fraternity by Mr. Venkat. We have Lakshmi, who obviously brings the vantage point of the platform and the service provider for security solutions, if you will. We were also supposed to have another member on board who can bring in the CIO or the head of technology and um, uh, information office for an organization perspective around this topic. So the topic that we have today is around no code and low code development. Uh, is it going to be a security catastrophe? And with obviously the need to use such technologies to drive innovation, where do we strike the right balance? I think that's the theme that we want to discuss today. So, taking a step back, I think just to set the context here, no code low code development is not something completely new out of the blue. It's been there for quite many years. It's obviously been there in forms and manner which have been um, quite productive for perhaps peripheral solution or application development requirements, like, for example, website building. In fact, even the advent of more business and workflow solutions like Google Suite, we've seen some of these adoption of no code, low code features as well. In fact, I remember when my son was dawning on the he's in eighth grade by the way, and he was introduced to the whole computer science curriculum within his school. The first thing as part of the project they asked him to do was to use this tool called Scratch, basically to create a very simple game that they could develop and showcase for understanding the plug and play model of development there. And I was little surprised with the wave of enthusiasm that came in, with the students in terms of coming out with very, very innovative and unique outcomes using that tool, which were presented. And I think there was in fact even a prize that came up for the best game development that happened as well. So um, fast forward, obviously, all these years, and we are seeing that now, in the paradigm of enterprises, and even with small and medium businesses where they need now development to happen rapid. They need solutions to be more baked, pre-baked, even before they can actually integrate them with the whole suite of supply chain requirements that they have to go through, and so on and so forth. We have obviously an evolution of no code and low code platforms that have come up in recent times. If you look at some of these platforms like bubble.ios and the webflows of the world, which obviously help in more front end no code low code development, what they also do is introduce the concept of democratized development through citizen developers. This essentially means that you don't need to have coding knowledge or development knowledge, but all you need is the ability for you to visualize and design solutions using plug and play models. And these platforms and solutions which bring those opportunities on board and enable the whole citizen developer community is where we are seeing the trend leading itself to. So on the CIO's standpoint, and perhaps even from the business leader standpoint, this is definitely a boon because they would love to see solutions, pre-baked modules which are repeatable, reusable, and can be plug and play, essentially to drive quicker feature development, quicker product releases. Work in a very agile way so that they can meet competitive requirements at the same time, also enhance customer experience as well. But from the other side of the table, where we come from, where the security practitioners, we obviously feel this is leading itself into a more unfathomable um, arena of uncontrollable security posture management, right? Which is even today, as we speak, with custom application development, as a security practitioner, still find it really hard to drive the right security interventions to make sure that applications are being postured security wise quite amicably. I think with the whole black box approach of no code low code development coming up, I think there's going to be definitely a lot of sea change, not just awareness but also practices and structures that we need to bring in to embrace that new reality that we are getting ourselves to. So with that being said, I think let me also give you a few statistics which I've heard around no code, low code development, which perhaps will just sort of strike us hard and make us feel that this is something that we need to definitely address, at least in the near future that comes up. So Forrester believes that over 75 to 80% of no code low code development adoption will happen, in fact, by 2021 itself. And we are seeing that becoming more and more perhaps in the year to come, now with obviously the pandemic perhaps also being in sort of a imperative towards looking at more and more democratized software development. I think no code low code adoption will see pretty much being adopted within enterprises and even small and medium businesses as well. Gartner has estimated this to be more or less of a 30 to 35 billion dollar opportunity by 2022, and we're seeing the advent of no code low code development not just in enterprise solution space like the Salesforce of the world and the success factors of the world and perhaps even the Microsoft of the world, but also we are seeing cloud service providers, where they had this initial serverless functions or function as a service model. They're also leading the change in terms of developing their own low code no code platforms as a service today. So we have obviously Microsoft with Power Tools. We have AWS, who have notified the release of Honeycode for their mobile application no code local development. And then there is the whole aspect of GCP also coming with their no code low code AppSheet platform as well. So that being said, I think the question that perhaps looms at large for us is, as CISOs, with this, perhaps in streaks of adoption that we are seeing in enterprises and perhaps becoming more and more evident as we go forward, what can we do to assure ourselves that the code that's being developed, which essentially now is going to be completely black box, will have the required amount of hygiene on security controls that we otherwise see in traditional software development cycles, right? So we know that the software development lifecycle itself has gone through a transformation from traditional conventional waterfall model to V models to even looking at now very agile workflows like DevOps and so on and so forth. But now with the advent of this in as a newer arena, uh, what we do as far as making that assurance and perhaps driving the whole shift left strategy around security interventions that are required in the development life cycle. So I think let me quickly start with perhaps Venkat, because he's had this journey board way early in his career map, and he would like to share his experience in terms of what his firm has done as far as bringing the right security into intersections and posture management was required for no code low code development as well. So Venkat, if you can throw some light on it, that would be really great.
Yeah, thank you, Shep, and thank you, DSAI, for having me in this wonderful conference. Shiv, coming to this low code, even though this low code, the term was coined around in 2014, low code was introduced way back when we had HTML. What you see is what you get editors, right? So it was very primitive. And coming to my journey, as you were asking, uh, so uh, we are a very old company, and we started in the in the late 1990s, when the internet was just starting in India, and we had to we had actually placed our server on a table in the data center. We were putting a fan, so that was the first server we had on the data center. So yes, when we started journey, we didn't know about security. Security was not given that much importance, and also as a web portal, we were trying to focus on getting new users, giving them good services, and at that time our USP was a lightning fast email, and even today we are giving lightning fast email, but we were working on that thing. And one day we figured out that we need to look at the security aspects, and this was more than 12 years ago. So we need to look at the security aspects, and I took up the task to make our website and make our applications everything secure. So I started attending conferences, and I started attending some local meetings, and understood about security, and also went to some gurus who are there, and understood about cybersecurity, and then we checked, and we found out some vulnerabilities in our sites, and we need to fix them up. So I went to the developers, and I was making them understand what is a vulnerability and how to make secure coding. But they are developers. Their background is different. They don't know anything about what is a security, what is a vulnerability, how to fix it up. So their job is to just to see if the site is working properly. That is working properly. That is what is their what is they are being asked to do. So what we done is, okay, we came to know that even though we took many training sessions to our developers, it was very difficult for us to make them understand. And since and at the time when there was a high rate iteration of people who were coming in going out, again teaching them again is becoming very difficult for us. So then we thought, okay, let's do one thing. Why don't we take out some important functions out of the code and make them secure? Okay, instead of asking the developers to write them, we'll compartmentalize. We will make them as a classes, secure classes, and we will do that. So what I've done is I've taken those classes out. I've made some changes, and with a couple of other developers, what we done is we added secure coding. We added a lot of this thing, and we just gave the classes to the developers and asked them to use this function. Okay, so for some input, they need to give what is the parameter, input parameter, and the sanitization, everything is being done at the backend. So for SQL input, they just need to pass on what is the column name, and a function is being stored procedure is being written in the backend. So that is what we have done, and everything is customizable, and we gave that to the developers, and they were very happy because half of the work is being taken away from them. So they just need to take out include the functions and classes, and they just need to use for functions. So they were happy, and we were also happy because we can now control uh, uh, the programming. And this is how we made sure that we are giving less code to the developers. Means developers are writing less code, and the code which we are maintaining, and if there are any issues and new vulnerabilities we found, if there are any new signatures we are coming in, we are making changes in the classes, and we are updating them. So this is how we started this low code no code journey. And yes, as I said, in 2014 it was a coin, but way back we started it in way back. And this is helping us a lot. And as I said, it is helping us cut the development time, and also it is helping us to make our code secure. This is our low code is. So not just we, so any development company or any company, even big or small, if they use these kind of logics, I think they will make sure that their code is safe, and also they will make sure that the development time is less. Yes, sure.
Great. No, thank you so much for that insight, Venkat. I think the fact that you mentioned that your journey board included, as part of the SDK that you were creating for the developers, you had baked in the security libraries and classes that were required for them to leverage. In a way, it also alleviates the euphoria the developers have about, security, that they have to always keep in standing, keep in line with the coding standards around security. And they have to always self-review, perhaps even peer review their files, ensure that there is enough attributes around security built in, at the time of even perhaps committing the code to the branch, or even performing the final build process itself. So that's it's a boon and a bane situation in terms of a development standpoint. But the real caveat there is about having the visibility to the code within the no code low code platform, where you can make those provisions available and allow it to be used by perhaps in this case the citizen developers, as we talk about it. So if I can also maybe throw this question to Lakshmi as well, and Lakshmi, in your view, if you can give your vantage point on where do you see the trend on security adoption, especially in the development life cycle, and perhaps the post-production phase of these platforms being brought into adoption for the citizen developers, and where, in your opinion, expert opinion, where do you see that we should perhaps step up the game on bringing the right security posture there?
Sure. And thank you, Shiv. And thank you, first of all, thank you, DSCI, for giving this opportunity. And this is a very interesting and timely topic, I would say. So I wanted to take a step back and make a little different declaration. There is nothing like no code. There is nothing like low code. So if there was no code, low code, there were no applications, no platforms that were supporting this whole development journey, right? You spoke about Scratch. We speak about Power Apps. We speak about several other platforms, right? So all of them have underlying code that they are using, right? So the whole impression that, yeah, no code, there is, because it's low code or no code, we don't, there is no security needed at code level, is in itself is a wrong or myth. I would say that people we need to come out of that whole thing, right? So back in those days, when I was part of the internal compliance team, I was not a consulting in the consulting space. We used to use several CRM platforms, right? So I think those were the earlier days when we used to have SAP or PeopleSoft, and where you have your basic structure in place, and then you do the programming on top of it, and then you create your own workflows and things like that, right? So um, we were at that point, we were when we were doing reviews, there were instances that we found, okay, there could be places that we should look at potential security exposures, but then because there were COTS products, then although there was a development that is being allowed, we were under the impression, we were giving a clean sheet. Okay, this is a COTS product, then you can't do much about it, right? So I think that in itself is something that we need to move out of it. Be it low code, be it no code, definitely there is a code that needs to be protected, is what I would say. Now, how much is too much, and how much is that we need to look at from a security perspective? Like Mr. Venkat said, that's a very interesting point about creating those libraries, creating those reusable components for developers to use that. I think that's way advanced if I compare in at that point in time when he was talking about, compared to what we look at from a secure development perspective. That should be called an invention, or rather an innovation that his team did at that point in time. And if you look at the security expenditure, security spend that we will be able to reduce as a result of that activity, that in itself gives the advantage of using the low code no code platform. Your investment on security, one, there is an assumption or baseline security that you assume that these products will bring on board. You have an assurance that you are driving through, say, your contracts and uh, pen testing reports and so on. And when it look at the universe of the code that you need to protect, you are significantly reducing the investment when it comes to security, right? So then you are ended up looking at, okay, what else, what is the differential security aspects that you need to consider when we are developing using the low code no code platform. So for example, um, we use power apps very very commonly these days, right? So what are while it is very easy for a citizen developer to use power apps to do their development, how do you do that secure development? What are the secure configurations that they should be using to protect that? So there were some incidents or hacking incidents that happened, for example, like Park Mobile, wherein the power app configuration in itself ended up exposing around 38 million user data online. So while they use that platform, it is equally important for them to use that sensibly. And how do you make a person who has very limited development knowledge, or rather they are used to those, I'm going back to the example of scratch programming or the block programming that been introduced these days, right? Instead of when they bring in blocks and create all of these things, how they should be aware of the security aspects to be considered on that. So a very very basic thing that I could think of is the baseline security. So what is your common denominator security that you would introduce to this platform um, when they do development? That also include, okay, what could be the design patterns, the common secure development code snippets that they should be using when they do that, or how do they use the secure access management component, right? So when we are they're integrating developing an authentication module, what are the acceptable secure access management components that they can use? What could be the key management practices that they should be leveraging, which are evaluated and fixed by the organization? Okay, these are the secure set of um, uh, uh, things that we could utilize when you are developing using any platform for that matter, right? So all that could bring in one side more security into what you are developing, even if there is less coding involved. And the second thing, you are significantly reducing your investment in the security, repeatable investment in the security, by doing every time you do a code review for the whole platform again and again, right? So these are the key key things that I consider that we should start looking at when we are adopting or moving towards this low code, no code, rather than thinking either there is no code, or no code means no security. So there is a balance that we need to strike between both of this. Right. So back to you,
Great.
Shiv.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi. I think the point that you brought out very valid around baseline security configuration, and I think it's something which even Venkat also had alluded to as well as part of building that capability through the development tool chain. You also mentioned about the fact that the advantage on the developers where they don't have to worry about code reviews and perhaps usage of secure coding principles, because that's pre assumed by adoption of these platforms in some sense. um, so yes, so I think I remember in fact in my stint with Freshworks, one of the so democratization of software was a terminology which was used very voraciously within Freshworks, because we were building software for custom engagement solutions, and in the vein of making it more adaptable and customizable for the enterprise development communities themselves to to sort of prefabricate the interactions and the workflows that were required to use the larger business logic that these platforms will bring to the table. So initially they start off with SDKs, and those SDKs would have intertwined within their feature kits security configurations, things that you mentioned about security access management, ability for them to in fact even interface with third party identity and authorization solutions like OAuth and so on and so forth, to even perhaps giving some bit of visibility around trail oversight, around events of interest from a security standpoint. Perhaps that can be also pulled back to the security incident and event management platform, where we would want to have incident analytics and threat assessments done more or less at least in real time, so that we can proactively identify those potential exposures even before they become plausible incidents or breaches, if you will. So it's a great opportunity for us to think about, while yes, no code, low code. I mean, even though I say this, I know that in your mind, you mentioned about it's really not. It's a misnomer. It's not really no code or low code. You do have code. It's just that it is black box for us, as a team. And that's the whole um, uh, you know perhaps the challenge that we're talking about here, because from a security um, standpoint, we can't measure how good a posture can we align our coding or our code base, unless and until we have the visibility to it. So in no code low code platforms where we don't have that kind of a visibility, and perhaps leading it on to also the trail of thought where the access management and even the data management schematics within those platforms are not completely visible. What do you think should be, or maybe if I can turn that question around perhaps to Lakshmi first and ask you from a, because you represent the genre of code quality and integrity validation solution, you know uh, fraternity there. What do you think from your vantage point, as a provider of security testing tools, that the market should evolve and perhaps adopt practices for the no code low code development that we're going to see as becoming mainstream in the days to come?
Very interesting question, right? And I wanted to, as a service provider, we cater to two different types of audience, right? So the first audience are the people who are developing those platforms for the use of no code low code purpose. The others are the consumers of those platforms, where they are leveraging those platforms to provide develop their own application. So when we look at the code level security, I would rather give the first side a little more weightage, because there is a lot of code that they have, that they are developing, right? And while we talk about all the traditional source code analysis and code review that happens all throughout, one of the other pertinent point that we also need to bring in is the code signing practices, because if you look at today, a lot of these platforms and open source ones as well, there is a question about the licensing and the ability to maintain the right versions on that, right? So how do you ensure that the code signing practices are deployed, followed, so that there is no unauthorized changes to these platforms, even if we are supporting the code uh, development platforms to others, right? So that's I think that's one of the pertinent point that I wanted to bring in, beyond just the code review and analysis. So all that is now, if you look at any mature, reasonably mature software development organization, a lot of this is already in place, because they do code review, they do analysis of those results, and then feed it back to their results. And there is a whole lot of integration that has already happened in the DevOps platform, that there is a continuous scanning that happens on those code. And so all of this is happening fairly. I won't say it is a lot, but fairly enough in the product industry, I would say. And we have been supporting a lot of them, not just from a code review perspective, when we are doing the assessments on their security maturity. So I would say code review is one place where a lot of these product organizations are pretty much mature in that approach. But when it comes to code signing, code protection, not a lot of them are up there. So those are certain recommendations that I would recommend. And other one is about using the secure protocols, right? So that again, we are much beyond. We are still shying away from using fuzzing as an activity to identify, okay, how strong are your protocols that you are using in the platform, right? How the inter module communications that happen, and if there is an integration that has happened between, say, the say OAuth or other access management platforms, or maybe you are doing proposing that as a cloud integration, how secure are the protocols that you are using. So I don't think we are doing enough to do the fuzzing, using the fuzzing techniques to leverage, or rather assess how strong these protocols are in your product. So these two things, definitely from a product development side, when it comes to the code level security and integrity, that I'll recommend. The other point, when you are coming to the other side of the table, who are using the code, using these platforms to develop. So there is so much of development, only this much of development that happens as such. So overloading them with a separate code review activity, maybe a little too much, because if we go back to the same objective of reducing the security spent by reducing the development effort, then we should look at more as a test as you code aspect. Integrate SAST or IAST in program products with the DevSecOps pipeline, so that you reduce the overall effort when it comes to developing with the code review, right? So those are some of the aspects that I consider from a code level. Definitely we need to talk a little more about the open source related risks as well. How do you combat those risks in your development life cycle? And also, how do you all look at the deployment level security? So beyond just doing the coding, how do you look at the deployment and runtime security when it comes to secure configuration? Also about how do you guide your consumers? So when it comes to the platform development organization, how do you prepare a fine set of release notes to guiding these teams to secure, how do you secure these platforms while you do the development, what are the security configurations that we recommend so that you do development securely. So a lot of this is missing today, and we could see that that's a very result that we see incidents coming out of those development using those platforms as well, from the news that we see today, right? So that's pretty much, I think we should look at least as a starting point today, Shiv.
Great. Absolutely right, and bang on, Lakshmi. I think that's um, from a standpoint of looking at not just pre-production phase of the use of no code low code development, but also the post-production state of union in terms of keeping vigil on the configuration drifts, if not the runtime security flaws, uh, basically around at least some of these most vulnerable situations that applications get itself. I mean, obviously, we are facing the Log4j, furore right now, and similar ones, which perhaps would also come in masked, through the adoption of such tools. I think having that visibility and ability for us to uncover, the attack surface and the places that where we need to put the controls in place, if a patch is not released, or at least having those compensating controls in place would be really, really useful. To that point, I think if I have to just perhaps shift gear and put ourselves in the shoes of a CISO and think aloud, um, in a very naive sense, the adoption of low code, no code, by the citizen developers or perhaps the designers within the organization, can also be called as an extension of shadow IT adoption as well. Now, shadow IT risks have always been, um, you know, grappling the security fraternity in a way where we don't know, uh, if we don't know what we need to protect, then we are never going to be cognizant of being in insanity of and having the right posture of security that we need. But that being said, if I can perhaps Venkat, if I can request you to give us an idea, and perhaps some tips for organizations as they bring more and more of such tools on board, to their business teams, to their designers, and perhaps even citizen developers in some sense. What are those, few top 3 or 4 points that we have to keep in mind from a due diligence standpoint, and making sure that A, we are aware of the adoption of such tools, and B, there is a certain due diligence process that we allow it to go through, so that we are assured, especially when it comes to compliance areas, and more regulated businesses, if they are going to adopt such tools, and with the compliance and regulatory requirements becoming more stringent, like especially around privacy and maybe even standards like PCI and DA and the likes of those. How do we ensure the compliance is well balanced with such adoption of tools as well? So a few tips around what you think as a CISO we should do in understanding the attack surface that uses these tools, to perhaps performing that bit of a due diligence to ensure that we have we're taking the right decisions around adoption of these tools as well.
Yeah, thanks you. So earlier I was speaking about the advantages of this no code, where we were using ourselves code base, and now coming to the actual topic of this of our panel, no code local, is it a security catastrophe, right? So coming to that, yes, it can become a catastrophe if we don't take proper due diligence, as you are telling, because if the professionals or the citizen developers go and uh, take help of the no code platforms outside, they need to keep in mind do they have the visibility of where the data they are storing the data. So when you are talking about compliance, we have data boundaries, and yes, some regulators want the data to be stored in some data boundaries. But where is that where is the data actually that my data is being stored. Okay, so we have functions right now. There's uh, uh, a function as a service. It is gaining lot of importance, and if we are using that thing, where is my data going? So as I said, coming from the compliance point, we need to know, okay, where is my data is being stored, what is the process that is being done. So we need to have that visibility, okay, actually what that is being done. And also we need to also we need to also get an assurance from them that the code what they are managing is actually secure or not. Some cloud providers may not give that thing, but yes, if we are a big company, and we actually are bound by these regulations, and we need to make sure that their code is secure. They are making testing on on their code, and they give us the reports that yes, that their code is secure. So we need to make sure that that code is secure, because we don't know what their code is, where their code is, and what is happening, right? So we need to make sure that the code is secure in order to avoid the security catastrophe. And also we need to see what kind of business logics they are using. Okay, sometimes my business logic is different, but their business logic is different. So we need to make sure that the business logics are also aligned with what my business is. And finally, as Lakshmi was saying, access control. So we need to also make sure that the code is being protected, and it is having proper access controls, that no one can go and make changes to that, and no one has access to my data. So these are some of the points which which we need to keep in mind, and which we need to ask the providers to give us assurances, and that so that the low code what we are using, it doesn't become a security catastrophe, but it will become an advantage to us in reducing our work, and improving our business what we do. So yes, Shiv, these are the couple of points what I'm.
Wonderful, Venkat. Thank you so much. I think that sort of sums it all in terms of the overall process of diligence that we as a security fraternity have to perform to ensure that the adoption is in line with the obligations that we have as an entity towards regulations and compliance that we have to keep ourselves with. Um, if I can also perhaps add the fact that, and this is something which, in fact, Lakshmi, you can also throw some light as well, because I know that even though we talk so much about security in the software development lifecycle, and there have been very little work that has actually come forward from the industry around creating a maturity model around software assurance, especially around security. The two ones which at least I'm more conversant with are OpenSAM, which is obviously from the Rust community, and the other one is the BSIM that Synopsys, in fact, has also spearheaded from their front as well. So now it looks like, with some of these evolution of democratized software development, would that also now become a factor of influence, for to request for from these providers or platform makers, in terms of no code, low code, where we can ask them to let us know what's the level of maturity when it comes to software assurance that they're building it, and if you're keeping that level, attested by perhaps a third party consultant, or an tester, if you will, or an assessor, if you will, because I don't think we have those strictures yet. But yes, self-certification, third-party assessments, those are still going to be the norms as far as these providers, and through the supply chain diligence that we perform. But would those standards also now become more sacrosanct in requesting for understanding the level of software assurance maturity they're building within those products as we onboard them in our mainstay application development?
Very, very interesting point that you brought in, Shiv, and thanks for that. And today we look at the software security maturity of organization, the way that we look at, okay, these are the set of activities that one should be doing. But the way that a maturity model like BSIM looks at it is by comparing that with your peers, comparing that with your industry, so that, okay, how many of them are doing, for example, say, let's talk about the design patterns, right? How many of your peers are doing that? and it makes sense for me to invest in that because that gives me a competitive advantage in putting together an investment for design patterns. And the other one, say we spoke about architecture blueprints. So that's an interesting point that that came out in the recent 12 release, that a lot of organizations are investing in, especially because of the supply chain attacks. And you would also agree to the fact that the new OWASP top 10 that has been released recently, the whole focus has been shifted to left, right? How do you look at design level issues from the code, and in a way that we are relating that to our no code low code security aspects as well. How do you put that together at the beginning itself, so that you have a framework in which secure framework in which you are developing, right? So some of this maturity model, and especially I can speak about bsim for hours. So bsim is something that brings you that confidence that I'm not if you're not doing, and there are 15 others who are doing in the same industry, that means you are not doing something that you are supposed to be doing, or rather many others are doing, and that is making them secure. So that's a way that these maturity model would rather than just saying that okay, you should do it, the maturity model is giving you a view that okay, there are several others doing, and let's pick this up, because we wanted to maintain a competitive edge from when it comes to software security in the market. So that's a way that I would look at the security maturity model as such, rather than benchmarking yourself to set of activities that okay, these are mandatory activities one should be doing.
Great. Thank you so much, Lakshmi. I think referential comparison from a benchmark standpoint really helps as well. I think we are probably top of the time right now. We do have one question from the audience around automation possibility with no-code security toolkits, and I'm guessing that's probably a yes, because we are seeing a lot of security automation now being built in within the DevSecOps value chain as well, and I think that will sort of extend naturally also into no-code, low-code adoption as they bring on board. So well, with that, let me take this opportunity and thank Venkat and Lakshmi and DSCR for giving us this opportunity to have this wonderful conversation around no-code, low-code security evolution, if you will. And we have still not desired, we don't want it to become a security catastrophe, but I think being proactive will really help. So with that, that's the closing note we have for this session. Thank you so much, and over to you, Sukrit.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Shiv. Thank you, Venkade, and thank you, Lakshmi. And thank you, everyone in the audience. Please stay tuned. We have a lot more in the day to offer to each and every one of you. And there's an innovation box which is starting at 5:30. So that's going to be an exciting space to be. So I would request all of you to kindly join us there. And once again, thank you to each and every panelist here for such a great session on a theme which is so relevant today.
Thank you, Shiv.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lakshmi.
Thank you.
And thank you, DSCI.
Bye.
It was
Thanks
pleasure.
everyone.